I still remember the sound. Not the lawyer's voice. Not the rustling of papers. Not even the click of the expensive pen my father kept spinning between his fingers. The sound I remember most was laughter. My parents were laughing while my sister received a check worth millions of dollars. The room was filled with polished wood, floor-to-ceiling windows, and the kind of silence that only wealthy families know how to create. The lawyer sat at the head of the table, carefully reading through my grandfather's final wishes. Then my mother smiled. My father nodded approvingly, and my older sister, Madison, tried to look surprised as a check, larger than most people's lifetime. Earnings was placed in front of her. Then the lawyer slid something across the table toward me. $1. A single crisp dollar bill. The room exploded with amusement. My father didn't even try to hide it. Maybe now you'll finally learn how to earn your own money. My mother smirked. Some children just don't live up to expectations. Nobody said a word. Nobody defended me. Not even Madison. I stared at that dollar bill while heat climbed into my face. For a moment, I thought that was it. That my grandfather had forgotten me. That somehow I had spent my entire life believing I mattered to him when I really didn't. Then the lawyer cleared his throat. There is one final item. The room became still. He reached beneath the folder and pulled out a sealed envelope. Written across the front in my grandfather's unmistakable handwriting were 5 words. For Emily and Emily alone. And suddenly my mother's smile disappeared. Growing up, I learned what it felt like to be invisible. Not ignored. Invisible. There's a difference. Ignored means people notice you and choose not to pay attention. Invisible means they stop seeing you altogether. My sister Madison was the star of the family. Straight A student, varsity athlete, student body president, the kind of person who always looked perfect in photographs. My parents adored her. Every achievement she earned became a family celebration. Every trophy found a special place in the living room. Every success became a story repeated at every holiday gathering. Meanwhile, I existed in the background. When I won a regional science competition in high school, my ribbon sat on the kitchen counter for 3 days before disappearing into a drawer. When Madison placed 3rd in a local tennis tournament, my parents hosted a dinner party. That was our family, and everyone accepted it as normal, including me, at least for a while. The only person who treated me differently was my grandfather, Robert Walker. He never spoke to me like I was less important. He never compared me to Madison. He never asked why I wasn't more like her. Instead, he asked questions. Real questions. Questions nobody else cared enough to ask. What are you working on? What do you think? What did you learn? Those weekends I spent with him became the best memories of my childhood. His lake house sat several hours outside Chicago. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't luxurious. But it felt peaceful. While everyone else seemed obsessed with appearances, Grandpa cared about character. He taught me how to fish, how to repair things, how to notice details other people missed. One afternoon, when I was 16, we sat on the dock watching the water. The lake was perfectly calm. Most people only look at the surface, he said. What do you mean? He pointed toward the water. They see reflections. They see what they expect to see. Very few people look underneath. I didn't fully understand then. Years later, I would. As I got older, the favoritism became impossible to ignore. My parents didn't even try to hide it anymore. When Madison graduated from college, they threw a celebration that cost more than my first car. When I graduated with honors in accounting, my father shook my hand and told me congratulations. That was it. No party, no dinner, no celebration, just a handshake. I remember standing in my apartment that night staring at the wall. For the first time, I realized something important. They weren't going to change. No matter how hard I worked, no matter what I achieved, no matter how successful I became. In their minds, Madison was the winner. I was simply the backup plan. The reliable daughter, the convenient daughter, the daughter who would always accept less. And because I never argued, they assumed I always would. Then my grandfather got sick. The diagnosis came quickly. The decline came faster. I visited him every week. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we sat quietly. Toward the end, he spent more time watching the lake than speaking. One evening, just a few weeks before he died, he looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Serious, almost concerned. Emily, yeah? Promise me something. Anything. When the time comes, pay attention. I laughed softly. Pay attention to what? He smiled. You'll know. Those were among the last meaningful words he ever said to me. 3 weeks later, he was gone. Now I sat in the lawyer's office staring at a $1 bill. The same parents who had overlooked me my entire life were enjoying their victory. Madison looked uncomfortable, but not uncomfortable enough to say anything. The lawyer handed me the envelope. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a single handwritten letter and a key. The letter was short, very short. It read, "Emily, if you're reading this, then everything happened exactly as I expected. Start where the truth first bent. Trust your instincts. The answers are waiting." Below the message was a string of numbers. That was it. No explanation. No instructions. Nothing else. The lawyer looked confused. My parents looked annoyed. I folded the letter and slipped it into my purse. But inside, something had changed. Because for the first time in years, I felt my grandfather speaking directly to me. And I knew he hadn't left me $1. He had left me something else. A puzzle. The next morning, I checked into a small inn near the lake house. I needed time to think. Time away from my family. Time away from their voices. I spread every document across the bed. The numbers from Grandpa's letter, financial records, old business paperwork, property documents. At first, nothing made sense. Then I noticed something strange. A transaction. Then another. And another. Small inconsistencies. Tiny discrepancies hidden inside years of financial reports. The kind of details most people would never notice. But I was an accountant. Numbers told stories. And these numbers were screaming. By midnight, I had found enough irregularities to fill an entire notebook. Money had been moved. Records had been altered. Values had been manipulated. Not illegally enough to attract attention, but consistently enough to reveal a pattern. And every path led back to the same people. My parents. The next day I returned to the lake house. Nobody was there. Using the key Grandpa left me, I unlocked a hidden cabinet built beneath his desk. Inside were boxes, folders, hard drives, recorded conversations, emails, contracts, years of evidence. I sat there for hours. Every document confirmed what I had already suspected. My parents had spent years positioning themselves to inherit as much of Grandpa's estate as possible. They hadn't stolen from him. They had simply manipulated everything around him. Relationships, expectations, perceptions. Most importantly, they had worked hard to shape the narrative. Madison was successful. Emily was ordinary. Madison deserved more. Emily needed less. The story had been repeated for so long that everyone believed it. Everyone except Grandpa. He had seen everything, and he had documented all of it. 3 days later, everyone gathered again at the lake house. My parents arrived confident. Madison looked nervous. I sat quietly. Then there was a knock at the door. An elderly man entered. His name was Charles Bennett, one of Grandpa's oldest friends. He carried a briefcase. Without saying much, he connected a small device to the television. Then he pressed play. The room filled with my grandfather's voice. Clear, calm, strong. Family is built on trust. Everyone froze. My father's face changed immediately. My mother stopped breathing for a moment. The recording continued. Grandpa explained everything. The investigations, the documents, the evidence, the years he spent quietly observing. Then photographs appeared. Emails, financial records, recorded conversations. Every piece connected perfectly. There was nowhere to hide. No explanation that could undo what everyone was seeing. My father tried interrupting. Charles ignored him. My mother demanded the recording be stopped. Nobody listened. Madison looked like she might cry. For the first time in her life, she was seeing the truth too. Not the version our parents had created, the real truth. Then Grandpa's voice returned, and this time he was speaking directly to me. Emily, the room became completely silent. If you're hearing this, then you've already found what I hoped you would. I felt tears building in my eyes. You spent your life being underestimated. My mother looked away. You were told you needed less. My father stared at the floor. You were taught to accept less. Nobody moved, but character reveals itself over time. His voice softened, and yours never failed. I couldn't breathe, not because I was sad, because for the first time in my life, someone had finally said it. Someone had seen me, really seen me. Charles opened the final folder. Inside was the last amendment to Grandpa's estate, legally binding, irrevocable, carefully prepared months before his death. My parents retained limited portions of the estate. Madison kept her inheritance, but control of the family assets, the businesses, the investments, the lake property, the trusts, everything that truly mattered, was transferred to me, not because I was the favorite, not because Grandpa wanted revenge, because I had earned his trust. And trust was the one thing money couldn't buy. My father stood up. This is ridiculous. Charles calmly slid another document across the table. A clause. Signed. Witnessed. Legally airtight. The challenge ended before it began. My father sat back down. Defeated. For once, he had no control. My mother said nothing. She couldn't. The evidence spoke louder than she ever could. Madison looked at me, not with anger, not with jealousy, with regret. Years of regret. Maybe she finally understood. Maybe she always had. I don't know. And honestly, it no longer mattered. After everyone left, I walked alone to the dock. The same dock where Grandpa and I had spent countless afternoons. The sun was setting across the lake. The water glowed gold. Everything was quiet. But it wasn't the lonely silence I remembered from childhood. It was something different. Peace. I sat at the edge of the dock and listened to the water. I thought about the little girl who spent years trying to earn approval she would never receive. I thought about the teenager who believed she wasn't enough. I thought about the woman who spent her life accepting less because everyone told her she deserved less. And then I thought about Grandpa, the one person who saw beneath the surface, the one person who noticed what everyone else missed, the one person who understood that worth isn't measured by applause, trophies, or attention. It's measured by integrity, by honesty, by the choices you make when nobody is watching. The lake remained perfectly still, and for the first time in my life, so was I. My parents had spent decades trying to decide who I was. But standing there beneath the fading sunlight, I realized something they never understood. They never got to decide that. Only I could. And as the last light disappeared across the water, I smiled. Not because I had won, not because they had lost, but because I was finally free. And sometimes, freedom is worth far more than any inheritance.